Kim Jong-il's sudden death led to a lot of speculation regarding succession, whether or not it would be successful, whether or not this would bring instability to the regime and to the peninsula. However, we see no signs of that. The succession has been going much more smoothly than many people anticipated. And I think the reason for that is North Korea made a number of preparations for this that outside observers did not recognize. We did see constitutional changes in 2009, some institutional arrangements, the party conference in 2010 that revitalized the party and brought in a lot of people to support this succession. So Kim Jong-il's death was sudden, however, it was not unexpected, and they had taken a number of measures. Many people had speculated that Kim Jong-un was young and inexperienced, and of course, all transfers of power and all political systems are difficult, but in particular, authoritarian governments. Dictatorships are inherently unstable, but particularly at times of power transfers. But in North Korea, there are a number of factors that support this transition: the political institutions, the ideology, the barriers to any potential challengers who would like to challenge the succession. And many people speculated that the senior generals would not take orders from such a young and inexperienced man who just turned 29 in January. However, that assessment is based on the premise that their interests diverge. And I would argue the exact opposite, that in fact their interests align. And so I ask people, if the generals were to push out Kim Jong-un, then they would replace him with whom? The fact is, this is the exact guy they would like to have. Their policy preferences align. He's continuing the military first line of North Korea. So I think we're seeing everyone in the senior levels, senior leadership coalescing around the transition, and all the signs out of Pyongyang point to that. Very recently, U.S. and DPRK diplomats announced a preliminary deal whereby North Korea will impose a moratorium on long-range missile tests, nuclear tests, and other nuclear activities in exchange for nutritional assistance, for 240,000 tons of nutritional assistance, and also for the U.S. making a pledge or reaffirming that it does not have a hostile policy towards North Korea. This is a preliminary agreement. The details still are being worked on, and even though many people had very high expectations or wanted to say this is a big breakthrough, I think we have to be very cautious. The moratorium is reversible, very easily and immediately reversible. North Korea agreed to maintain this moratorium for as long as the two sides are in dialogue to improve bilateral relations. So I think that's a strong incentive to get back to the table. Many people had scoffed at or kind of belittled North Korea, mocked North Korea for their test failures in the past. They've tried to launch satellites. The satellite launchers failed. Their two nuclear tests were very low yield. However, we have to remember that every time they do these tests, it enables the engineers to go back and fix these problems. All countries who have developed these types of weapon systems have to go through these engineering hurdles. So for as long as we can keep these caps on testing, it serves the international security. I think it's a good thing to do this. And of course, we're very concerned about a possible proxy test, whereby North Korea could conduct a test and share the test data with Iran, for example. So those are the kind of things that we really want to prevent. So I think it was important that they got this preliminary agreement, but we'll see how the details are worked out and if this leads to a longer process and sustainable process of denuclearization.
In the early 1960s, North Korea begins its hyper-militarization in response to the Cold War arms race. The USSR offers to help them develop nuclear power, but not weapons. After decades of nuclear development, North Korea consents to signing the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, but denies inspectors access to their nuclear sites. The NPT, signed by 59 other nations, is a step towards nuclear disarmament. A top Pakistani scientist allegedly sells nuclear weapon technology secrets to North Korea. United Nations officials attempt to inspect North Korean nuclear facilities, but are blocked from certain sites. Under suspicion, North Korea threatens to withdraw from the NPT. In exchange for economic and energy support from the U.S., North Korea signs the Agreed Framework, promising to dismantle its nuclear facilities. North Korea accuses the U.S. of not fulfilling their energy agreement fast enough and threatens to restart their nuclear program. President George W. Bush calls North Korea a part of the axis of evil, and U.S. officials privately accuse North Korea of violating the 1994 agreement. In response, North Korea withdraws from the NPT and declares to the U.S. that it possesses nuclear weapons. North Korea announces they have successfully detonated a nuclear device underground. Seismic readings and radioactive air quality samples support their claim. The UN imposes heavy sanctions on the country. North Korea repeatedly uses their nuclear proliferation as a bargaining tool in exchange for humanitarian aid from the U.S. and UN, but neither side comes to a final agreement. Peace talks are almost at a stalemate, and North Korea continues to test rockets and advance its nuclear proliferation goals.